Okay.
Hey, everybody. We're on my longtime friend Jarrett Bell and Cool Papa Bell on Twitter and every place else.
Yeah, man.
Great to have you, man.
It's good to see you, Zenny. How you doing?
I'm doing, man. Have Kane will travel.
All right. Well, you hang in there, man.
Oh, yeah. I got a question for you. I can't call you young fella, but I got a question for you. Um, you went to Colorado. You went everywhere. You went to Nashville. You were down there with Cam and Cameron, and and every place else. What I've written, what you've communicated regarding Shedeur Sanders, but share us with us just very succinctly. How, from your view, did this start? Because I wrote that I felt that there was a kind of conspiracy, and then from where I sat, I thought part of it was politically motivated because there are a lot of people with MAGA platforms and all that. And I thought this feels like someone spent a lot of social media money. And then Trump comes in. I thought I got really suspicious when he came in, made his comment, and I thought it's starting to look not kosher. What do you think about what happened from your
Well,
perspective?
I think it's very suspect to delve into conspiracy theories. I really
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
And I don't like it as a journalist. Um, we try to go with facts.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think what happened as this whole story unfolded over the past couple of years, people were just taking narratives and running with them.
Yeah.
And so that's dangerous. And so when you start talking about a conspiracy, I mean, give me something besides, oh, I think it's a conspiracy. So that's not going to fly, at least not with me. And so
Hmm.
I don't believe that's what happened. I don't believe that 32 NFL teams got together and said, we're going to not draft this kid, or we're trying to send a message or anything like that. So, there's a lot of stuff out there. And, um, I think as we look, let's say this, it's definitely the biggest draft plunge that we've seen in our lifetimes, right?
Yeah.
For somebody to be expected to go really high. I mean, we've seen guys slide before from the first round to the third round. We've seen that happen before, and guys slide within the first round and all of that. And then we've seen guys um, like when Tom Brady was a sixth round draft pick, that wasn't a story because nobody was really expecting him to be like a first round pick. And
Hmm.
then Tom Brady goes on to become the GOAT, um, which is just further proof that it really doesn't matter where you get drafted. And so, yeah, Brady is definitely a handy reference from the standpoint of where Shedeur got picked in the draft, not so much in the context of the big fall.
Hmm.
But you've seen guys, Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame. He was an undrafted free agent. Dak Prescott was a fourth round pick, and he's the highest paid player in the NFL. So it's not always about where you got drafted. And, look at this too, Vinny. I mean, Zenny. Um, Last year, 6 quarterbacks got drafted in the first round. So you pretty much take those teams out of the mix for looking for a new franchise quarterback because they just did it last year.
Hmm.
Then you look at another 10 teams, 12 teams that have established quarterbacks. They have quarterbacks. I mentioned Dak Prescott being one, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen with the Buffalo Bills. Oh, Kansas City's got a guy named Patrick Mahomes. So, you know, now you take another 12, 15 teams out of the mix because they have quarterbacks. Not to say they couldn't draft a guy later in the draft, just to kind of have as a camp arm or developmental project, that sort of thing. That happens all the time. Green Bay for years, they would always just take a quarterback just because, even though they had Brett Favre and later Aaron Rodgers, they would always just take a quarterback later in the draft just to have him. So now that's what we're talking later in the draft for Shedeur. So anyway, I say all that to say, you look at the teams that took first round picks last year, you look at the teams who have established quarterbacks now. Okay, now your pool of where he can go is limited. and there's probably a half dozen, maybe 8 teams that you could say, okay, let's see what they do at quarterback. And of those teams, the Saints took somebody else. Now, this is where you get to the nitty gritty of the question, really. It's not conspiracy. It's
Mhm.
what did those 6 or 7 teams that needed quarterbacks, what did they do, and why did they decide, and how did they decide, and all of that is really the question. So the Giants, um, we saw them take take a guy at the end of the first round to trade back in.
Mhm.
I don't know what they were thinking. They know what they were thinking. There's a lot of stuff out there in terms of whether he interviewed well or impressed them and all of that stuff, right?
Mhm.
The Saints were another team, and then the Cleveland Browns ended up taking him as the second quarterback they drafted. So, again, I'm not going to sit here and say there was just some big, large conspiracy, but there's a lot of conversation out there as to why it happened.
Can I offer from the point of view of the conspiracy theorist, just for you know?
Doesn't do a lot for me, but go ahead.
Okay, cool. In 2016, there were a number of social media organizations that specialized in between 5 different nations um, engineering social media to get outcomes in terms of social division. And they would target athletes and athletic issues and topics, particularly in the United States. And this was finally unleashed in 2016, and it played a key role in how President Trump won the election the first time, and it's played a key role in a number of elections since. And the markers of how they do it were all over this. The websites that had anonymous markers, the Twitter accounts that were brand new or just a few months old or hadn't been used in a long time, go on and on and on. And then Trump himself steps up on Truth Social and offers an opinion just at the right time when it seems like you have all these MAGA people who are glommed onto it. And, as a person who actually specializes in my company in doing that sort of thing with other organizations, I know that marker when I see it firsthand. And not only that, I actually have the original proposal that the Israeli company Psy issued. In fact, my friend, here is that proposal right here. That's the actual proposal. They pitched $2 million to my friend Rick Gates, who you may know as the gentleman. Rick Gates was the gentleman who flipped on Trump. He's been on my program 4 times. We're good friends. He's in Ukraine a lot. So my point is, there is a serious effort, and it's great when common folks like come up and say, "Oh, it's not," because that's what they want to hear. They want folks like you to say, "Hey, it's not real. There's no conspiracy. There's nothing," because then it allows them to do what they've done very successfully and gotten, in a number of cases, very, very wealthy on. All right. So that's why I say, hey, look, this is just another marker to mark social division using a prominent black player, knowing doggone well that the resultant talk and traffic was going to be super high and impossible for anybody in the media to ignore. And so here comes Mr. President with his low approval ratings in the perfect place where he believes he can, notch it up a bit and make that comment, and yet still enjoy the division in society to take advantage of.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
It would also have to include, those few teams that I mentioned that had quarterback needs to be influenced by all of that. And I think the
but
one
that's a good
thing
one,
that
But Jared, I'm glad you said that. I don't mean to push back, but I just to add that you said that did, because it begs the question: why would they pass on a man who, and you said yourself in your publications, what was one of the sixth most accurate in NCAA history? 4,317 yards last year alone. You know the story better than I do. There are a
yeah,
lot of.
exactly. Well, this is what I'll say is that, yeah, there are questions about why they didn't take him, and his viability as a prospect, I think, is very strong. based on what I saw, based on those statistics that you mentioned, and all of that. Um, each of those teams, they operate with their own process as to why they're going to pick somebody and why they're not going to pick somebody. And so the fact that all of them didn't, yeah, it's interesting. And I think if we look at the history of the NFL, we look at the history of how athletes are portrayed. Um, we look at the history of narratives with the draft in terms of, and I think that was the most disturbing thing to me as an observer as this whole process unfolded, not just over the last 4 days, but over 6 weeks or whatever with the draft process. These narratives that came out and projected him as something that would give you pause. And they talked about whether or not he interviewed well and all of that. And quite frankly, Shedeur um, has his own branding, but he's not the first player that's had branding, and he's not the first player that was ultimately, um, very confident in his abilities. And so the fact that he didn't have any like off the field, um, activity. And when I say off the field, I'm talking about criminal stuff or anything like that.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not like he beat up anybody or anything like that. So he had a squeaky clean record in terms of being, a solid citizen. Um, High grade point average, all of that. So those things definitely, I think, are fair to question. And I think um, a lot of us, a lot of Black people probably, just knowing the history of how different athletes get portrayed, um, were really ready to say, okay, yeah, this is another case. And so I think that narrative, and you start talking about division and you start talking about public opinion and that sort of thing, that's an easy one for people to gravitate to, even if it's not true. And in this case, and I'm not saying it is and isn't, right? Because,
Right.
um, like I said, I just can't roll with the conspiracy theory
Oh,
just
sure. I understand.
because it is. And so I think the best thing that I can understand is that each of these teams had their own decisions and their reasons for doing what they did. But it's not the end of the world for him because he's in the NFL and he'll have an opportunity to compete. So we'll see where it goes from there. But I will say this too, Zeddy, the draft ratings have been through the roof.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
ratings for like the second and third day, and I think he's like the second most watched draft,
Ever.
in many years. Yeah, and so
Ever.
that's pretty crazy when
Yeah.
you think about that. But the draft, it definitely had a lot of interest from people really wondering. And the other thing too, like we've watched Colorado with Deion Sanders over the past couple of years. When I say we, I mean um, Black people,
Hmm.
football fans, college football fans, um, and really interested in Deion's story, and you know, for good reason. I mean, he's been successful, and he's a big name, and he's energetic personality, and so I think so many people have followed him and them over the past couple years that it's only natural that when we get to the draft, hey, that's somebody that we know.
Yeah.
If you don't follow college football, okay, but you probably know Shedeur Sanders, or his
Yeah.
father for sure. And so I think that was part of the um, the interest in him as well. And this is not just something that just formulated over the past 3-4 days,
Right.
but going back a couple years. Oh yeah, Colorado and Dion, and he's got his son, and he's the quarterback. And so, and then if you started watching Colorado, then you became familiar. Because for me, and I'm an NFL writer, obviously don't cover college football, and so I don't watch a lot of college football. I'll watch a little bit here and there. I'll see the highlights. I'll follow the polls and I know Georgia's good, that sort of thing, right? But I don't really get into it like a lot of college football fans. And part of the reasons that I'm knee deep into the
Yeah.
NFL
Oh, right. Yeah.
and even when it comes to traveling and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And
But you
so,
went to the, if I may, you went to the combine, and
yeah, I did. Yeah.
yeah, and you remember Bill Carroll, who's a partner with me. I think you met him last time that uh, I was doing live stream. That was last year, or the year before that. At any rate, he was there, and he asked the Shedeur a question. I thought it was a different question to ask, but I wanted you to see the situation because to me, this is sort of exemplary of the kind of trigger that I think some people are triggered by Shedeur. I'm not, but take a look at this. This is what happened at the combine, and I'll play it right here. There.
I can't hear the question. I can't hear it.
Oh, you can't. Oh, you know what happened? Hold on a second. I know what happened. I keep doing that. I have to remember that with StreamYard, this version of it, I have technical cancellation for a second and then do it. Let me try that again, Jarrett. Hold on a second. It only takes a second for me to roll that back to there. And right there. Favorite right there it is. Okay, right here. This is Bill Carroll talking right here. Okay, here we go.
What's your favorite passing concept?
And Jack, can you hear that right there?
I heard what's your favorite something?
Yeah, he was about to ask what's your favorite passing concept. You can hear it though. That's good. Here it goes. Okay.
Coordinate high red zone, got it against cover 3 match. What team you represent? I'm just here asking football questions. Is football allowed? Nah, because then I don't want 3rd and 8. And it's crunch time, so people know my favorite concept.
And see that it was interesting exchange. I would not have approached him that way, and so that's why I wanted to get your take on it. I would not have approached him that way, and but my point here, let me make it succinctly, is I think there's some people there among the draftites and draftnicks who are triggered by Shedeur in a way and feel like they have to test his intellect and that sort of thing. And I didn't think it was the way to go. I'll just say that about my friend because Bill's my friend, but I disagreed. Okay.
Yeah, I was hoping he gave. I was hoping he gave me the answer to it. I remember that question. I wasn't thrown for the side. It didn't bother me. I wish he would have answered it, but I can understand him not wanting to get too deep into it. But I thought the way that he responded and didn't give an answer was pretty clever too.
Yeah, it was. No, I thought it was funny.
What team are you from?
Yeah, what team are you from? Right. And see, I was wondered that if he was like that in an interview, somebody would misinterpret it, right? Because my first thought, because Bill, he's really heavy into the draft. He's covered it for 30 years. Bill. And but I just thought it was. I'm not eager to feel like I have to intellectually challenge. And I think sometimes he does that. Okay, I'm just saying about my boy. And, and I'm wondering I'm wondering if somebody else in the NFL staff thinks the same way because they all know each other. And I'm wondering, hey, look, if they got that kind of response in the room, did they maybe take it too far?
Probably didn't get that kind of response in the room. I would suspect that he would, but I don't know. So that being a press conference situation, like I said, it didn't really bother me. I thought it was a fun question, and he handled it. And his whole press conference, I thought he did a good job.
Yeah.
In terms of all the wide range of queries and questions that came his way. So.
It's why is he such a polarizing figure?
I think it could be a number of reasons. I really do. I think the fact that he's a strong, confident brother, might rub some people the wrong way. That's
That's
probably
probably
where
where
a
a
lot of
lot of
it,
it, flows
flows.
from.
So
So
we've
we've
seen
seen
that
that
before
before
in
in
history,
history,
but
but
we've
we've
also
also
seen
seen
guys
guys
do
do
a
a
lot
lot
more
more
over
over
the
the
top than
top
he
than he
is.
is.
So
So
I got
I
a
got
little
a
bit
little
of
bit of
echo in
echo in
this.
this.
Oh, you know what happened though is that the echo happened because I forgot to turn echo back on. So there you go. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. Yeah,
Okay.
that's. I'm not getting
But
old yet. I'm just.
yeah, but I just think that through history we've seen black quarterbacks and black athletes too just get treated and held to a different standard than others. And so you go back to Lamar Jackson for a recent example in 2018, and there were some people who were saying he should be a receiver. And
Mhm.
look at Lamar Jackson now.
Bill Polian did that. Yeah.
Yeah, Polian did, and to his credit, he came out after Lamar established himself as a quarterback
Yeah.
and apologized and said he had it wrong. But Polian wasn't the only one who said that. But what happens because Polian said it and being such a credible voice in NFL circles and a Hall of Fame GM, once he says it, other people run with it. And I think that's what happens all the time. So if he says it, even if he changes his mind, and he didn't during that draft process, to my knowledge, but once he says it, it becomes a narrative that gets repeated. And you could, as how it's been said, you could tell a lie so many times until it becomes the truth. And I think that's part of what happens a lot of times in the draft situation, because I will tell you, I cover the NFL, and then when the combine comes and the draft comes, all of a sudden, people think that I know something about these college prospects when I really don't. So I listen to the draft analysts. I listen to what Mel Kiper and Louis Riddick and Daniel Jeremiah and Charles Davis and my man
My
Bucky.
man, Charles. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and Bucky Brooks,
Hmm.
um,
Bucky Brooks is the
them,
man too.
Todd McShay. I
Yeah.
listen to those guys because I know that they've been studying the college landscape, all year long.
But
So
I
when
have to
they,
say this though, Jared, you didn't get this award for nothing. USA Today writer Jarrett Bell selected as the winner of 2022 Bill Nunn Memorial Award. I want to remind people of that. And the reason why is because look, you're well respected among NFL owners. You have their ear too, so you have some idea what's going on. You know.
no, but what I say to that, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But what I say is that I'm not going to all of a sudden become an expert on college football and who's, aligned in the draft. And so that's why I pay so much attention to the people that really do it. Now, I could tell you, the Steelers need a quarterback and the Cowboys need a running back. I know that, right? Because I cover the NFL. So when I cover the draft, um, it's still NFL centric. It's from an NFL perspective in terms of trying to see what teams are doing to address their needs. But like I said, I'm not going to, pretend that all of a sudden I could tell you that that linebacker from Oklahoma should be the third ranked linebacker in the country versus the guy from UCLA and Iowa, because I just don't have that type of perspective. So I'm honest enough to say that. Don't expect that from me. But I can tell you about the history and the deeper context to a lot of things. But you know, that's one of the things with the draft process that is just, you know, it's a beast. It's a beast upon its own. But I have so much respect for, the people who spend an entire year sizing up the draft class.
I have to ask you overall regarding the plight and problems and success of the black quarterback. What your opinion was of my friend of yours, Warren Moon, coming out, unretiring his jersey for Cam Moore, which I thought was beautiful because I've talked to Warren and on video, I know you have too, about black quarterbacks, how Jameis Winston was treating other people. I thought that was a beautiful moment. What say you?
Yeah, oh, for sure, for sure. And I talked to Warren the other day, and it was definitely something that he felt convicted about. And it's not the first time that someone has asked him from that organization, a player, to be allowed to wear his number one, his
Hmm.
retired jersey.
Hmm.
He thought Cam Ward was worthy of it for a couple reasons. One, he was a quarterback and he's followed him. Warren Moon has followed him through his college journey, especially when he was at Washington State.
Yeah.
So he's been exposed to him. And then what he told me is that everything he's heard about Cam Ward and his leadership, his humility, the class he carries himself with, that's his kind of guy, if you will. Now, you saw Abdul Carter, the Penn State linebacker, ask Lawrence Taylor if he could wear number 56. And Taylor was like, go drop on a bag of rocks, basically. Go make, but I think what he said to Steve, so he talked to Steve Serby from the New York Post, and I think he told him something like, he's got to just get his own number and make his own number special. So it's not automatic that Warren Moon or some other legend would unretire their jersey. But the other thing that Moon said that I think is worth pointing out is that when Moon starred in that number, he was with the Houston Oilers.
Yep.
And now it's the same organization, but that franchise moved to Nashville, moved to Tennessee several years ago.
Yep.
And, the Titans are just an extension of what the Oilers were. So no one has worn number one for the Titans, and Cam Ward will be the first one. So Warren said he thought about it. He didn't give him the final answer until like the week of the draft.
And something I think about when I think of Warren, I think of when he was with the Washington Huskies, and I'm thinking he's going to start in the NFL, and he didn't get drafted at all and wound up playing in Canada.
Yeah, for 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And wow. And so how cool is it for things to have changed the way that they have, huh?
Yeah, no doubt. And you'll have more than half the quarterbacks in the NFL this season will be black quarterbacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen, Jalen Hurts just win a Super Bowl from Patrick Mahomes, who won multiple Super Bowls. And so there's definitely been an evolution. But, Warren Moon, Doug Williams, when you talk about the history of black quarterbacks, those are two of the faces on Mount Rushmore, right?
Yep.
And
right.
So and Patrick Mahomes will be a third.
Mm-hmm.
And we can debate. We can have another show and debate the fourth one, but I'm going to say that, okay?
Yeah. Hey,
Warren Moon is that guy.
Why doesn't Dion get somebody like Nicole Lynn, agent, or at least Steinberg, to represent him or help him out, as opposed to how he's handling it himself? What are your thoughts on that?
I think you got to ask him that. And I'm going to wrap up here, but
okay.
I think Dion is astute enough in the NFL business world to advise his sons. When you talk about the way that the salary structure is with the rookie pool in the NFL, there's not much that an agent can do in terms of negotiating the contract like back in the day. Mm-hmm. What they can do, and this is what Dion can provide, though, they can provide training for their clients. And, you can get that from Dion in Colorado. And I know Shedeur did have his own quarterback coach. He and Cam Ward actually the same quarterbacks coach. And so I think that's the value. Where I think the question should be or will be moving forward will be if Shedeur sticks and becomes, everything he hopes to be, that he'll have an agent for the second contract.
Yeah.
And, so Lamar Jackson came into the NFL. He didn't have an agent, and then he still ended up being one of the highest paid players in the league. But he lost some money. He left some money on the table. He didn't get his money fast enough because he didn't have an agent. Whereas Josh Allen at the same time with Buffalo was already getting, and was in the same draft class as Lamar, and he got his new contract 2 years before Lamar got his contract.
Yep.
Well, I think one of the things that benefited Josh Allen, like so many players, is that you have an agent working that second contract while you're still concentrating on football, whereas Lamar did not have that. Even though I know he had people that he relied on, like he had a team of marketing people, he had, attorneys, accountants, he had professional people giving him advice, but he didn't have that agent who could walk into Eric DeCosta's office and say, okay, Lamar's up in 2 years, let's start working on the framework of the deal, and so on and so forth. So I think that is when you really look at whether or not a guy has an agent and what an agent can do, unlike it used to be. So we'll see. But yeah, Nicole Lynn, you mentioned her. She's definitely, top of the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He can call Jalen Hurts for a reference.
Hey, so folks, catch my friend's work on USA Today. Thank you very much for stopping by. And I want to remind everybody once again, he is the winner of the 2022 Bill Nunn Memorial Award, and it's well deserved. And again, follow him because he always has his finger on the pulse of the National Football League, and it's a beautiful thing to watch, and I'm honored to know him. So there you go.
Okay, where do I send the check, Zenny?
I'll give you the.
No, thanks a lot. I appreciate you.
No
man.
problem, man.
All right, have a good one.
Hey, I got you. You have to move a muscle. Everybody, hey, we'll be back with more discussing Shedeur Sanders later tonight. Subscribe to the blog report with Zenny62 and bookmark ZennyReport.com. Oh, by the way, do you realize this is my 20th straight year of being credentialed media for the draft, even though I didn't get to go this time, Jarrett? How about that, man?
Hey, man, time flies, bro.
It sure does. Well, I don't know why I'm doing that for. I shave. This is a natural thing.
All right, my man.
All right, I got you. No problem.
Have a good one.
You too.